and welcome to today's webinar, Know When Your Numbers Are in Good Health. I'm Sarah Novak, Marketing Manager here at LVMC Technology Solutions, and just want to go over a few housekeeping items real quick. All attendees have been muted, and if there's anything that you need, please let us know using the chat panel. We will be taking questions throughout today's webinar, so please feel free to submit them at any time. We'll also be recording this session and sending that out in a few days' time. So thanks so much for joining us. And today we have Kenneth Sims and Glenn Sharp who will be presenting. And with that, Kenneth, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it and want to welcome everyone to our webinar today. And as you can, if you'll go to the next slide there, Sarah, that would be good. But my name is Kenneth Sims, and I am responsible for our Intact practice. I have been with LVMC for 19 years and helping our clients implement financial solutions. I've also been involved, along with Glenn, who you'll be hearing from a little bit later during our presentation, in our Intact practice, which we're now about 11 or 12 years into as well as a partner in the Intact channel. So Glenn, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about the agenda and kind of go from there.
All right, thank you, Kenneth. Yes, my name is Glenn Sharp. I've been with LVMC Technologies this is going on my 17th year. In that time, I worked with our dynamic CRM system, but then whenever we started, as Kenneth mentioned, started our Intact practice, I came over there and actually started as the first consultant in our Intact side. So we've had a lot of success in our Intact practice, so I help kind of lead that with the sales and also on the support side with customers in order to keep them happy and engaged with Sage Intact.
All right, well, thanks, Glenn. As you see the agenda here, we're just going to have a brief introduction of LVMC for those of you who may not be existing clients of LVMC. I'm going to talk a little bit about Sage and just kind of have a little bit of an overview of Sage Intact. We're going to talk a little bit about Know Your Numbers, which is kind of the theme of our webinar today as it relates to some of the trends we see in the healthcare industry. And then, of course, Glenn's going to be giving an Intact demonstration, which we'll try to get to as quickly as possible because I know that's the good stuff. We'll hear from one of our existing customers in the healthcare industry about their use of Intact. And then we'll have some things to talk about how we can, next steps in terms of how you can move forward if you're interested in looking at Sage Intact further and have some wrap-up activities. So Sarah, if you'll go to the next slide. So in terms of LVMC, we've been around for about 26 years, which for a technology company, I think is pretty impressive. Been around for quite a while. In addition to implementing financial solutions, we're a full service technology company. We have teams of software consultants, software developers, network engineers that do all things network engineering and server and support and things of that nature. Our software developers help us develop ground up applications from scratch, but also do a lot of our integration work between Intact and other solutions. We have a team of project managers that helps us to implement our projects and support our clients during those projects. And so we have quite a bit of activity going on there in addition to our financial consulting practice. We are affiliated with a top 50 accounting and business consulting firm in the US. We have 3 locations, as you can see here, and we are nationally recognized across all of our different practice areas with LVMC. So you can go to the next slide there, Sarah. So we are an award-winning technology partner. Of course, the thing that may be of most interest to you is there in the middle, Sage Intact Premier Partner. What that means is that there is a select set of Intact partners that Intact recognizes as being a premier partner. We're a top 5 national partner for Intact. To date, we've got close to, actually that number may be a little bit up from there, about 400 clients that we have implemented or supported from an Intact standpoint. So we've been doing this again for about 10 or 11 years. It's been very successful practice for us, and primarily due to the strong nature of Sage Intact, which hopefully we'll be able to present to you today. So we'll go ahead into the next slide. So what I want to do, just kind of at a high level, is talk about Sage Intact. What I want to focus on initially is just the word cloud. So we can see here that Sage Intact is certainly considered a best-in-class modern cloud platform, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what does it mean to be a cloud platform, and why is that important, perhaps important to you? So cloud is part of a bigger type of discussion around digital transformation, and cloud is one of the three components of digital transformation technologies. And we're not going to talk about the other two today, but particularly as it relates to cloud, there's kind of three aspects to it that I just want to kind of touch on this morning. The first is that a cloud solution is accessed over the internet. That is important for a variety of reasons, primarily because you can access Intact from wherever you have internet access, whatever device you may be on, whatever computer you may be on. And certainly, we all understand over the last few years, as a result of the pandemic and other things, the availability of financial solutions available to our remote workforce, or for our workforces that are geographically dispersed, is a critical component of us being able to maintain our business and grow our companies even during difficult times, or times where your actual workforce isn't in the office next door to you. So being accessed over the internet is certainly a big part and component of the cloud. Second component is that it's a multi-tenant solution. And that's kind of a fancy way to say that a true cloud solution, there is one instance or one copy of the source code that all the customers that use that product share and access. So all Sage Intacct clients use the same version of source code. That's obviously important for many reasons, but primarily one of the biggest ones that would impact you perhaps is the speed and the pace in which innovation can be brought to you as a customer. So in most on-premise legacy scenarios, you may get a release every year or every couple of years where you may have to go through a major upgrade of new hardware and new software in order to upgrade your instance of that product that's actually physically resident on your own corporate computers. That's not true with Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct is able to release quarterly updates to its product every quarter, every 4 months, innovations including artificial intelligence and all other kind of things that are immediately made available to you and all the other Intacct clients. Certainly critical in today's fast-paced times, and your ability from a corporate standpoint to meet the goals and objectives you have as a company to meet your own business needs. And then third, it's hosted by the vendor. So Sage Intacct hosts the product, it hosts it, which is critical because as you're aware, you don't have to upgrade that solution because they own it. They're upgrading it on that quarterly basis. And so they're taking care of all of that hardware and all the things that are surround that hardware, including the security that's required to support ensuring that that's a secure solution. And this is critical for you because in many cases, clients are unable to purchase on their own the security that Sage Intacct can bring to the table around our solutions. And we know certainly in today's time that security is a big thing we all have to be concerned about. Okay, so Sarah, you go to the next slide. So Sage Intacct is recognized as a leader in the marketplace. I'll focus on two of the kind of icons you see here. The first is that it is the preferred provider of the AICPA. AICPA literally wrote the book on the accounting standards that most companies in the U.S. follow. And ever since we've been a Sage Intacct partner, which is about 11 years, it's been the preferred provider of the AICPA. And so certainly that speaks to the strength of Intacct's core financials and financial reporting functions, as well as all its ways in which it can be modified to meet particular industry needs, such as the healthcare industry. And then, of course, it's also been rated #1 in 2021, but actually for the last 5 years, the #1 in customer satisfaction on G2 Crowd, which over 2,000 customer satisfaction reports had put it as the leader against all other ERP products in its space. So certainly critical that the customers really like Sage Intacct. They like its intuitive user interface and the way in which it's able to help our clients be successful. All right, Sarah. And of course, we're all familiar with Gartner, and certainly it's the gold standard by which a lot of software technology is kind of assessed and rated. And for the 5th year in a row, Sage Intacct received the highest scores in Gartner's critical capabilities for cloud core financial management suites for both the mid-size, large, and global enterprises. So certainly critical as compared to its peers in the market, and certainly one of the reasons we've been successful in working with our clients over the years and implementing and being successful with Sage Intacct. All right, so if you may remember from the opening slide, I mentioned that where our offices were, and one of our offices, actually our corporate headquarters, is located in Nashville, Tennessee. And Nashville is kind of a hotbed of healthcare related companies in this area. For those of you in the healthcare industry, you probably recognize that perhaps. And so out of all the 400 clients that we've done some Intact work for over the years, almost 47% of those clients are healthcare clients. So we have quite a bit of experience in the healthcare market. And certainly these trends that you see here represent the things that our clients have been most interested in relative to their needs from a healthcare standpoint and how Intact is able to meet those needs. And Glenn will be kind of speaking more to some of these during his demonstration. So the first is obviously moving to the cloud. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some I've already mentioned. But as we're aware, a lot of healthcare companies, as they continue to grow and scale, are doing that through acquisition. And so adding additional legal entities to their corporate ecosystem of companies as they may grow and scale across certain geographic areas or across the United States. And so it's important to be on a solution that allows you to have access to those solutions wherever you may be as you continue to grow and scale your business. Because of those acquisitions and some of the unique ways in which you may need to manage those corporate legal entities and their relationship to each other, perhaps there's different ownership scenarios that may be at play as well. The ability to consolidate that data across all those different legal entities, whatever those locations, whatever it might be that you need to do, be able to slice and dice your data by, is critical. And Intact was built from the very beginning to be a multi-entity solution, which allows for that consolidation and a lot of more advanced functionality around intercompany and things of that nature that help you to be able to support those consolidated models that you'll need across your enterprise. The other big area that we've seen as it relates to not our healthcare companies is cost reduction initiatives. Certainly, this is something that all industries are faced these days. We know that resources come at a premium. It's hard to keep and retain people. Our ability to reduce cost and remain competitive in the marketplace, competition continues to grow as technology becomes more readily available across the ecosystem of our various industries. Particularly in the healthcare field, certainly reducing cost is imperative. We've seen a lot of work in the AP automation space around Sage Intacct and using its own AP automation things that are available within the solution, as well as Intacct marketplace partners who have more advanced solutions that can be connected to Sage Intacct to improve areas of AP automation. Certainly, this also applies as it relates to KPIs and the ability to manage those numbers and have visibility to those numbers, and not only financial numbers, but also those numbers related to your operational activity as well. And Glenn will be speaking to this during his demonstration. Of course, we're all familiar with the regulatory requirements in the healthcare space. Intact is one of the few ERP partners that will actually sign a BAA agreement. If clients take advantage of Intact's advanced audit capabilities, then will be able to sign a BAA agreement that shows their ability to protect your PHI type information. And then over the last couple of years, we certainly have actually brought on board to Intact several healthcare companies that in this more consumer-driven or telehealth type area where we've seen increased integration requirements between those patient portal and some of those patient visit billing type scenarios where that data needs to be more connected to Intact in a more automated way for that revenue to flow on a daily basis. So we've seen a lot of work in the integration space there related to healthcare companies in the telehealth type field. So these are just some of the areas that we've seen that are trends in the industry that we believe Intact is a good fit for. And so Glenn's going to now kind of take us through showing you some of that, showing you Sage Intacct and how some of these things actually look. So I'll turn it over to Glenn.
All right, thank you. So to get started, you can go to the next slide here. As we talk about knowing your numbers and what your numbers mean within the system, that's a very important industry that we have to think about as far as the key industry numbers. Doesn't matter if you're part of a MSO or DSO, not-for-profit or FQHC, whatever type of healthcare organization that you have, knowing your numbers, be able to act upon those numbers are very important. Next slide, please. So what do you measure, or what can you measure? And basically, if you have any type of information that you want to then apply, it's great to track that information. So some of that information, as we will see whenever we go into the demo, may be more statistical information as far as like bed count or patient count, those type of things. And that may come from your EMR system, that may come over to Intact, be uploaded over to Intact, or it may be more of your financial information, of course, your revenue, expenses, to see how your organization or individual facilities are comparing to either to each other or to industry averages. Next slide, please. As we talk about healthcare dashboarding, there's just some examples here, and we'll look at some other examples. But a dashboard within Intact, as we will see, just allows you to kind of have a snapshot, a real-time snapshot of either your overall organization, if you're like in an MSO or DSO organization, or for individual facilities, being able to kind of slice and dice the data that you're looking at in order to see kind of what's the true performance of that facility or of your overall organization. All of these dashboards are have security around them so that you can make sure that people who are not supposed to see that data do not see that data. So you can really kind of privatize that information and make sure that only the people who need to have eyes on that have that available. And the same person can have multiple dashboards that they may use and be able to use that information to take action on. Next slide, please. This is an example of the way in Sage Intact, what makes it unique from other systems that you may have used. If you've used other systems, like if you're on QuickBooks right now, maybe you're using the class dimension within Intact. Within QuickBooks, it just has the one. Or maybe you're in more of a legacy system that uses a segmented type of a GL account structure. That's where dimensions kind of take the place of those, but also help you be more flexible and also simplify how you're doing your financials. So when you enter a transaction into Sage Intact, whether it's through General Ledger, through Accounts Payable, or any other of the modules, you're able to tag that transaction with different dimensions. In the top left of this, where it says standard, you can see that some of the standard dimensions that come with Intact are the location, department, class, and vendor, customer, employee, and item. Now, these dimensions, you can use as you're tagging transactions, but the last four, vendor, customer, employee, and item, they also function as what they are. So in other words, a vendor dimension is a vendor record. Okay, so you can use that type of information. For all of these different dimensions, you can create different groups, as far as reporting, to group things together. You can also create a hierarchy for just about all of these dimensions for reporting, at different levels within the organization. On the bottom left, you'll see specialty. Now, these are some dimensions that come as you may add other modules to Intact. So if you're using like the project dimension or the project accounting functionality, you'll be able to add the project dimension. For the inventory management module, you could add the warehouse dimension. And then if you're doing contracts and contract management within Intact, then you can have the contract dimension. So sometimes you're able to get additional dimensions as you add functionality. If we go across to the dependent sector there, that also has to do with if you have more task or cost code or cost type of things that you're doing, if you're doing the more project accounting space. And then above that, as far as user defined, you can also have additional dimensions that you may purchase if you need additional dimensions in order to kind of track the different information that you want to measure within your organization. Next slide, please. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my screen to actually look at Sage Intact. So I'm starting out right now on my screen just with the Sage Intact website. If you go to Sage Intact, you will see this website. The reason that I'm starting here is sometimes people have questions if they are new to the cloud or new to Sage Intact. And so some of the times they have questions about security and how does, failovers and those type of things work. And so Intact puts that information right on their website under the company area, and then Trust Sage Intact right over here. If you click on that, that's going to bring you up to a page where they provide a lot of their information right there for you. So in other words, system security, you can click on that. It will take you through all the different types of compliances and failover and data loss prevention. You can go into all these different areas to really get a very good handle on how Intact handles your information. And there's others that are available there, like current system status. Intact guarantees a 99.8% uptime. So if you want to look at the current system status, you can select that as well, and it will tell you what the current system status is. It actually never fallen below the 99.8%, but you can have that information available to you right from their website. They don't hide that type of information. I will also point out, as was mentioned earlier, that Sage Intacct also has releases 4 times a year. This is part of the products. You're never on an older version of the system than someone else. You're always on the current version of Sage Intacct. So this shows the release schedule when those releases come out. These add functionality. They do not take away or limit a functionality into the system. You can see that we had one already this year on February the 18th, which added additional functionality to the system. So now I'm going to go back into our demo system here, and this is looking at some of our numbers. So here we're looking at a healthcare facility. Now this is more of like an MSO type of facility that you may have. So in this organization that we're looking at, these things up here at the top are called performance cards. So performance cards give you like a snapshot into information to look at like patients served, then to calculate revenue per patient or number of providers. So this is an example of that statistical type of information, non-financial type of information. But then using that information, we can do some calculations on the revenue per provider or revenue per patient type of information as well. So we can use that different type of information and display it on our screen. Now, just to give an example, this is more facility management, so it's a kind of a role-based type of dashboard that we're looking at. As we scroll down here, you can see in this organization within Sage Intacct, it's in what's called a multi-entity shared environment. And so what that means is that within Intacct, the different facilities here that are set up within the system, each facility is set up within Sage Intacct. What makes them kind of come together, and the reason that you're able to consolidate the information together, is because they share a chart of accounts between the different systems. So since they share a chart of accounts, even though they may not use all the geo accounts, but since they're sharing the chart of accounts, you can easily consolidate this information together. Okay. So from this view that we're looking at, which is called the top level, we're able to see all of our different facilities. As you can see here, this is more of an income statement by facility. So we're able to kind of look across and see different information. Now, this view that we're looking at and being able to see this information does not take a full accounting user. It does not take someone who's, has the ability to enter transactions. This is more of what Intacct has different types of users, and this would be kind of the lowest cost type of user who just needs to view information, just needs to consume the information. So they'd be able to look at this and look at it by facility as they're doing that, and they can kind of look at some of the information. And if they were to see like this office supplies right here for facility number 6, this looks out of the ordinary. And if they want to drill down on that information, they can select that. That will open up in another screen here. Let me pull it up here so you can see it. So they can see what's making up those journal entries, okay, or making up those entries. And they can see right here is a bill that's making up the majority of that. So they'll select that as well. And then what that will do is whenever they select that, they can actually see the bill that was entered into the system. They can see how it was coded into the system, and then if it has an attachment, they can actually open up that attachment if they want to see the actual invoice that was sent in. So this type of information, which is drilling down to the source information, is available to the person who has that type of security, but it does not have to be a major type of user within Intacct. It can be someone who just has read-only access, but they can still see that type of information. In addition to that, in this, we can see that we are looking at things by different types of services or different providers, depending on how we get that information in from our EMR systems. So we can also track other information here, or we can look at things by divisions, within our company as well. This is looking at what's called an aggregate distribution by clinic location. So what this is doing is looking at different facilities that are under different groupings and then kind of grouping them together just to have a different view of the information. And then also you can see here, we're kind of breaking out some of the Medicare and Medicaid costs, you know, that you may need to track those, either be revenues or cost in the system, that you may want to track that type of information for year-to-date or month-to-date type of information as well. So by using our different dimensions that we have, we can really look at our information. What it will allow us to do, as I mentioned, I'm looking here at the top level, but if I need to kind of drill down into one specific, just going to use this other one here, to drill down into one specific facility, I can use my information here and say, I just want to look at this facility. And when I hit apply, all my information then will change just for that one facility to show me that facility's information. So I don't have to have a whole different set of reports. I can use the same reports for that information. Or if I wanted to look at it maybe by a certain provider. So I'm just want to look at this by, I'll just say Department of Pathology. And so then all my information again will change. So I'm just looking at information for one of my divisions, you know, one of my information there. And so I can really look at my data and look at it a lot of different ways, kind of from the same view, but being able to look at it. If I wanted to break it down by provider as well, I'll just choose someone here. So you can really kind of look at your information a lot of different ways. Okay, and drill down into that. As I mentioned, this information is also secure. So other people, you can keep other people from having this ability, or you may have someone that's at a certain level. Maybe you have someone who's a department manager, and we'll look at some examples of that as well. Kind of another view, as I mentioned, someone can have multiple dashboards. This is a finance manager. So they have the same type of information that they may drill down into. They may have some of their financial ratios, but also some of their information that has to do more with their financial information that they want to track and they want to look at as well. So these up here again, you create this type of information within the system, and we'll take a look at that. But then they can also view their information and kind of evaluate how their organization is doing, either as a whole, or as we mentioned earlier, they can drill down on it by individual facilities if they choose to, or groups of facilities. So there's a lot of information that is available and things that you're able to do in this type of environment. Now, as I mentioned, we're in a multi-entity company here, so we can see many different facilities at this level. So the way that Intact kind of controls that information is that we're going to look at one of our modules called the company module. Now, under the company area of Intact is where we set up our different facilities, or what Intact calls our different entities. So it identifies those different entities within Intact. So it's very easy. If you wanted to set up a new entity, you just click on Add up here, and then you would give it an ID and a name. If you're printing 1099s, you'd also go to federal ID, but that's all that would actually be required to create that entity. This other information is good information for reporting, but as far as creating the entity, that's all that's required of that. So that would set up that new facility or new entity within Intact. The other thing you want to tell the system is, how do you do inter-entity transactions? Okay, so within this multi-entity environment, what allows kind of for the ease of use of the system is the ability for Intact to handle your due to, due from transactions. So we do that right after we set up the entity. We set up our inter-entity account mapping. So this is what's called the advanced mapping. So you can have your different facilities set up. So between entity A and entity B, then you can say, this is my due to and due from accounts for each of those. There's also a basic model that you can use, mapping plan, that just has an entity and has what its due to, due from transactions are as well. But you can be very specific about how the system will handle your due to, due from transactions. So we're going to take a brief look at this and see how this is done and how the system handles this within Intact. So I'm going to go here under General Ledger just for a moment. We'll come back to this, and I'm going to create a journal entry. So on this journal entry, I'm going to select a journal and a posting date, and I'll just say this is an inter-entity example. And I'm going to just tell the system, I'm just going to move some money between two different accounts. I'll say this is going between entity facility 1. I'll go ahead and choose a department there. And you can see these are some of my other my other dimensions. Now, these do not have to show up here. They can be hidden if you do not need to see those within the system. But I'm just going to say that I'm going to move $1,000 here between two different entities. So So I'm going to go to the same account, and I'll choose another facility, and I'll just use that corporate. Okay. So I'm just moving money between two accounts. Now, if I tried to post this right now, the system would tell me that's not going to balance because it wants to keep the balance sheet in balance. So what it's looking for right here is it wants me to choose one of these entities as the source. So with that mapping we looked at earlier, so the system knows how to map that information. So if I go ahead and post this information, post this journal entry within the system, I can go into my journals and I can look for this entry, which is under my general journal. Then if I view this entry that I just did, you can see this is the entry that I made, but then this is the inter-entity transaction that the system made automatically. So it handled the inter-entity transactions for me on that based off of my entry. Now this was on a journal entry. Intacct works the same way in accounts payable or accounts receivable. Any of the modules where you may pay, if you have a centralized AP and you pay out of one checking account for all of your different facilities or entities, then it will do the due to, due from whenever that payment is made between the other facilities. So Intacct will handle that due to, due from transactions, which is a lot of complexity that a lot of different healthcare organizations have to deal with. Also, one other thing under our company that I just wanted to show right here very quickly is how Intacct handles permissions. Now, this system has what's called user-based permissions, okay, within it. And so what you can do is set up for each user what module and what access do they have. So it has a very flexible type of permissions that you're able to use. So for example, if I was to go under accounts payable here, and I'll make this bigger so that we can see it. These are all of the different activities that can be done under accounts payable. Then there's also down here a section that's just on accounts payable system reports. So you can control what reports or what information that someone may use within the system. You can also control what activities that someone has access to. So you may have someone that's able to enter vendors, but then you have someone else that enters the bank details information. So you have a separation of duties that you can build into each user by controlling what access and what information they have on every type of activity that they can do within Sage Intacct. Now from our company area, the other thing that I want to talk about and highlight is our general ledger. So within Intacct is what's called a multi-journal system. And we saw that a little bit earlier when I went on journals. So under our journals area, you can see the transactions here. If you have permissions and if that month is still open, you can go into your general journal transactions and edit a transaction. If you have that type of admin type of permissions that you're able to do that. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of different journals that are set up here because Intacct uses journals to categorize where information is at. So you don't have to look through a bunch of different journals, maybe if you're looking for your payroll entries, because all your payroll entries are in your payroll journal. So you don't have to search for them through your general journal. Okay, so just a way to categorize where information is at makes it easier to find. And then a lot of times your different modules that you may use will also use journals as they're entering transactions. So in other words, accounts payable bills goes to the accounts payable journal, but the payments comes out of the cash disbursements journal. So just another way you can kind of find that information that you're looking for. Now, Intacct, besides being a multi-journal system, is also a multi-ledger system. So what that means is we can close out accounts payable, we can close out accounts receivable, so we can do these closures every month. And then, of course, once those are done, we can close out general ledger. Now, once we close general ledger, of course, it will close all the sub-ledgers that feed into it. But it's a very easy process that has to be done. Everyone does not have to get out of the system. It just takes a few moments in order to close the books. Now, at that point, once you close the books, for that, depending on what your business process is, some people, whenever they close the books, they do not open those books back up. And if that's the case, then you can do adjusting entries to adjusting journals, and then you can select to include those journals on your financial reports or not include them on your financial reports. Other companies will allow you to open your books back up. But of course, this is an admin, a security permission that you have. You can go to that and you can open up just one, all of them if you leave it blank, or you can select if it's just a certain facility you need to open up. You select the period you want to open back up through, and you can also open up your subledgers. You just open the books back up, make your adjustments, and then close them back. It's a very simple, very quick process that you're able to do within Intacct. Okay. So that's one thing I just want to highlight about the general ledger area, is that it's a multi-ledger and multi-journal system. Now, of course, if we're looking at our different general ledger accounts or statistical accounts, as we mentioned, you can see here, this is a 4-digit account. Most of our clients use 4, 5, or 6 digits for their GL account numbers within the system, and they can track that type of information. As you mentioned, there's also statistical accounts that can be entered in. These are more non-financial type of accounts that you may use depending on the different things that you're measuring within the system as well. So you can make your journal entries for those within the system pretty easily. You can also do reoccurring journal entries that may happen, every month, and you want to set up that schedule. It will make those journal entries for you automatically. You can also set up memorized transactions. So maybe where it's coded to does not change, but the amount changes. You can set up memorized transactions as well into the system. And then also within Intact, you can have what's called multiple books. So of course, in this system, we're looking at accrual books. And within Intact, you can use accrual books, cash books, or a combination of accrual and cash. Okay. Most people use accrual books for that, but you can set up what's called a user-defined book. So a user-defined book, could be something like a real estate book, commitments, or if you have to do eliminations or you have to do restatements. And what that allows you to do is make those entries to a journal that is just for, and book that is just for those entries. And then that way your accrual book stays consistent across. And again, on your financial reports, you can choose whether or not to include this additional book on your financials or not include it, or just show it by itself. So it gives you a lot of flexibility and ways to do your reporting within Intact. There's also another new feature that is within Intact, and it's called GeoOutlier Detection. So what Intact is doing with that feature is that it's using machine learning. So it's a service that uses your historical transaction patterns. It evaluates your current transactions that may be set up if you're doing journal entry approvals or different things. And then it flags transactions that don't match the way that they've been done previously. So it's machine learning how you usually enter your transactions. So for example, if you have you're doing a certain entry to a certain GL account, and it usually goes to this location and this department, for example, and maybe you are using a different department or something that got keyed incorrectly, the system will flag that so it can be looked at. So it's kind of a constant audit of your information. So you're just looking for those outliers and making those corrections as they come up. And so the machine helps you do that as you progress and kind of keep your books as accurate as they can be. Okay, so that's a lot of our general ledger functionality. Of course, you'll have some of your system reports that you would expect to have, like your trial balance and, of course, chart of accounts, any type of those general ledger reports. You'll have all those type of reports available to you that you would expect to see in other systems. Another thing I would like to talk about for Intact is kind of workflows, how Intact uses workflows within their system. So to look at that, I'm going to go here to purchasing. I'm just going to select overview of purchasing. Now, for purchasing, you can see here we have a workflow in place. You can do purchase requisitions. It can be converted to a purchase order. You can receive against and do a vendor invoice. Vendor invoice stage is when it goes over to Sage Intact. Now, you may or may not need to do your purchasing through Intact, but it does have that built in as part of your core that you can use that if you wish to. Some of our healthcare clients will use a system like Hybrid. Hybrid is on the Intact marketplace. They have an integration that's already integrated with Intact, so that information may come over from Hybrid into Intact and populate, these different objects within Intact with the information from Hybrid. Or if you have an EDI system that you use, there's lots of times there's integrations that are already built to bring that information into Intact, but to bring it into your general ledger process to help simplify and that general ledger, recording things to the general ledger more expediently. Now, but you can use the purchasing process within Intact. You can design your own workflow of information and approvals at each stage that you wish to. You can have multiple workflows going on at the same time. From our purchasing area, information flows into our accounts payable workflow. So within accounts payable, you enter a bill or the bill comes over from our purchasing area. You can have an approval on that bill. You can do your pay bills functionality, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And then you can also have an approval done before you print checks or do ACH for that process. Now, this is just a general workflow for accounts payable. We do have many customers using the open API of Intact with other systems like Bill.com or MineralTree or Beanworks. So you may be using one of those type of systems for your AP automation. So those systems can feed into Intact, and so they can do your transactions, but then that information will be fed in here, both for entering the bills and paying the bills. And that way it's hitting your general ledger in real time, and that information is being posted in real time. But here again, you can use accounts payable just directly through Intact using the Intact capabilities of accounts payable. They are in future releases here improving some of the AP automation that's built within Intact. So you may be able to have that scanning type of capability you have with other systems and do that directly with the Intact to bring that bill information in, and also automate those payments, whether it be paying from check, ACH, or those type of things, automating those payments that go out, that type of functionality as well. Now, within our accounts payable, of course, you have a lot of your 1099 or AP information as far as your vendor aging, your check registers and bills registers, all that type of information. You can cut your 1099s directly out of Intact. So some of that regular type of functionality that you're used to in any system is available here as well. So all this information then comes together within Intact in our reporting area. So as we have that different information that's coming in, whether it be our statistical accounts, our financial information, and we need to then, or from accounts payable and those different sources, we need to consolidate the information. We need to put it on our financial reports. So within Intact, they've made it very easy to create financial reports. It uses your different dimensions that you may use. It also uses what's called account groups. So whenever you associate or add a new account within Intact, you can have a new account group, or you can have it automatically assigned to an account group. And then that goes into Intact. So as you think of account groups, you can think of the rows on your financial report. So if I click on hierarchy here of assets, you'll notice that in this example, my cash and cash equivalent category has my cash accounts, my accounts receivable has my accounts receivable accounts. So basically where these fall on your financial report is kind of what makes up account groups. And then like your current assets and your fixed assets, those will roll up to assets. So that means if you're creating a financial report, you don't have to know all of the things down here. You'll just add your assets, add your liabilities and equity, and you'll create a financial report. And then whenever you're adding financial reports into Intact, it's a very simple process available for that as well. Now, Intact will come with about 25 to 28 financial reports already available within the system, which would be a couple of different types of balance sheets, P&Ls, cash flow statements, and things like that. It's very easy to add new reports into the system. If I was to put a report name in here, I can choose on this report to either look at it like a regular report way. So in other words, my label's going down the side, my time period's going across the top, or I can use it kind of looking by my dimensions. So I can look at it with my customers going down the left-hand side was one of my dimensions, or it could be departments or facilities, and then have my different account groups go across the top. Okay, so just another way to look at your financial information. And as you're bringing in or using that financial information, you bring in that account group. I'll use net income in this example here. Just a little bit smaller so I can click my button here. That will bring in all of those sub account groups and everything within the system. Okay. Now, whenever that comes up, it says detail, which means you can see the detail of this. You can change it to summary, and then you can actually break any of your these different account groups down if you want to look at them and expand by your different dimensions. And it will kind of show each of your different dimensions for that account group. So what that tells you is that Intact has a very flexible way of doing their financial reporting, but a very easy way as far as recording that type of information. And of course, we do training. We show you how to get the most benefit out of these, but it's a very simple process. Once you select your account groups, you kind of walk down this path here of adding your columns, any computation filters. But what's really important up here as you get to kind of format and that type of information is that you can also have this information only available to certain people who may see this type of account or see this type of report within the system as well. So you can really kind of control that by permissions right here. So I can say right now this report's not available to everyone. I can remove that and say this report is only for a specific user. So only this user plus myself as the admin who created it would be able to see this report. So you can really control access to information. Then, of course, once you have that report created, you can schedule that report to go out automatically by setting up a schedule to send reports out automatically. Of course, you can also put it on the dashboard, as we saw earlier. Okay, so we're using our information that we're tracking. We're using that information that we have within the system to track our numbers within Intact. In order to bring that information, make it visible so that people can make actionable type of decisions based off of the information that we have and that we're storing within Sage Intact. To kind of show an example of this type of information that we have and able to capture in here, we have one of our clients who will kind of be giving a testimonial of our information.
Sage Intact allows me to spend less time in pulling and linking numbers and downloading spreadsheets and just use that time to interact with different departments and provide them the financial data that they need. My name is Jennifer Lamb. I'm the controller for Amplex Pharmaceuticals, Inc. We had been using QuickBooks since the inception of the company. Although it's easy to use, it lacked the internal controls. It also didn't have the functionality to make electronic approvals of invoices and purchase orders. And it also lacked financial reporting, like a robust financial reporting tool.
We decided to work with LVMC Technology Solutions as our business partner. They wanted to understand our business so that they could help us deploy the tool in a way that was going to benefit our business the best.
We've already seen some process improvements in several areas. In Sage Intact now, we can run financials in a click of a button and not having to export our data and manipulate our data. In addition, our CFO has access to these financials via a dashboard, so he can look at this information really anytime, anywhere, and drill into transactions without having to come to the accounting department to ask any questions.
The volume of transactions that go through the company is really large, and being able to manage and track all those approvals is difficult. And so Intact offers features that allowed us to do a lot of unique and custom workflows right from the core application that really extended the functionality of the application for us.
The time in evaluating our data is very valuable, so that as a controller I feel like I understand the transactions more, and so it's important that I have that time to do that.
We see Sage Intact as being very scalable. The core features gave us that workflow functionality, the ability to go essentially paperless within the first couple of weeks of using the application. But it was also important for us to see through additional business partners, through the Sage Marketplace, we can plug in, truly a plug-in to extend the functionality into best of breed. We have a host of solutions to choose from. So it gave us a sense of confidence, and we really felt like we'll have a great solution for the long term.
All right, thank you. So we got to hear from one of our customers who is currently using Sage Intact in order to really advance their reporting, to advance their business. They're in the pharmaceutical industry type of organization. So they're able to use the information they're using within Intact and report off the information kind of in real time, which has given them a lot of advantages in their current financial markets. At this time, I believe we want to kind of open up and see if we have any questions that anyone may have for us on Sage Intact or about LVMC.
I don't see any questions right now, but certainly if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them at this time while we wrap up. If you think of anything after the webinar, we will send our contact information and follow up with you as quick as possible.
So, Sarah, if you'll go to the next slide, I think I can speak a little bit about some of the next steps. So, if you're like me, after having perhaps seen something and then kind of think you may be interested, kind of the next question is, so what are the next steps? So how do I begin that financial transformation journey? And so here's just some things that we have learned over the years and some things that I would recommend to you as you consider where you might be wanting to go with your financial solutions and with technology in general, even outside of financial solutions, perhaps. So one of the things I always tell folks is never to implement technology just for technology's sake. So no matter how much it may sound really great to go to the cloud, and we definitely, believe that's the direction you should be heading, you shouldn't just do that without consideration of really what your business situation is. So evaluating your current market, your current business objectives, and kind of laying that foundation across your enterprise relative to what you would like to accomplish and what the end result will look like is a critical component to beginning that journey. Without that, we don't know what target we're trying to hit, which is obviously important. Item there about collaborate and communicate kind of speaks to this as well, because in many cases, as we start talking about cloud solutions and digital transformation, more than likely these changes are going to not only impact your financial systems, but also your operational systems that may be feeding into your financial solutions. Or the integrated processes that you're going to want to put in place to manage things both operationally as well as in your back office. It's important to involve those stakeholders across your organization in those conversations so that you're moving forward in a kind of a path and bring all that information together so that as you begin to deploy those solutions, you're working through that plan strategically. You've always heard of the saying, we don't want to fire and then aim or get ready. We want to do it the other way around, right? So we want to get ready, we want to aim, and then we want to fire. And that's certainly true as you're to making technology decisions. The third item here is assess your technology requirements. And this is an area that we could perhaps assist with as a trusted technology advisor, where you need to then, as you bring those business requirements and those goals and objectives and that strategy of your business to the table, then you're going to question about what is the right technology for me? What are the ways in which I need to proceed forward on that? What would the strategic plan look like? Maybe what different phases may look like as we maybe roll through that. And so certainly this is where a partner can help, because we've been down this road before with many clients and many industries, and we've done this before, so we can kind of help you to avoid those landmines and help you in your decision-making process about making technology and cloud-based digital transformation type decisions. You certainly can think about deploying cloud solutions as your on-ramp to innovation, in the sense that as you begin to, once you have that plan, you don't necessarily have to eat the elephant all in one bite. You can begin to onboard those different products that are going to help build that new ecosystem of solutions and systems to help you in your journey. Because in many cases, we can implement those cloud-based solutions in a much more efficient and much more faster than we could in the past. So for instance, a typical core financial Sage implementation may only take 90 days from kickoff meeting to go live. And so you're not talking about a big time investment where you're working on a project for 6 months, a year, or whatever it may be. And certainly as you introduce parts of that plan that you're putting together, getting there quickly and getting some return on that investment more quickly is certainly helps as you continue to grow your organization and get buy-in into your organization about how these things can help improve your business. This one I really stress very heavily, because a lot of clients don't even think about this. Different competitive situations, sometimes it may restrict those that you can talk to, but I certainly recommend that as you attend industry events or as you work within your particular industry or sub-industry, that you talk to other peers in your companies that maybe have already begun that journey or have had experiences with technology in ways that may be beneficial to you. That information can kind of help you avoid, again, those landmines and provide additional insights for those that are actually using some of those solutions or have gone down those paths. And then lastly, keep the big picture in mind. So going back to my previous comment about not just implementing technology for technology's sake, you also make sure that you don't, you may have currently legacy systems that are disparate, that are not connected very well, that aren't integrated, and you believe that cloud solutions potentially get you there. But if you just start adding cloud solutions and not really keep in mind your overall architecture, your overall enterprise of what you're trying to accomplish, you can end up with cloud solutions that are totally disjointed as well, and the same thing that you had today. So you want to avoid that. And so as part of your planning and assessment and working with a partner, we can put that strategy together, that strategic kind of game plan, to try to make sure that we're going to keep that in mind, keep those things in mind as we're building that with you to help bring all those pieces and parts together in a more automated and efficient way. So these are just some things you can think about getting that, and certainly If you're interested in talking more about your particular situation after today's webinar, we're here to have those conversations and try to help you as best we can to kind of think about what that journey may need to look like. And along that line, in addition to the financial solutions that we provide, as I mentioned before, we are a full service technology company, and there's many other things that you may be struggling with from a technology perspective that you may be looking for. And these are some of the other services that we provide. As I mentioned, our network engineering team will be able to help you focus in areas such as remote IT and services support. So if you need help completely outsourcing your internal IT function, or you just need help with particular aspects of that, we can help you with that. We obviously can help you with cybersecurity and monitoring and protection against those risks and threats we talked about earlier for your computing platforms that you'll have within your business. This is certainly something that's on the forefront of everyone's mind today, especially given the activities in Ukraine and Russia and some of the cyber attacks that everybody's expecting to come as a result of that. We can actually help you with cloud computing and storage and hosting. Maybe there's some on-premise solutions that you can't move to the cloud right now, but you need to have that hosted somewhere other than on your own servers. You no longer want to be responsible for being an information processing center, and you want to offload that to the cloud resources. We can help you with that. And then we can also help you, as I mentioned earlier, in that transformation journey and providing advisory services to help you get there. And then lastly, in terms of customer relationship management or donation management, if you're looking for solutions that can help you get a hold of and manage your donor database and how that process might work in terms of keeping track of that and reaching out to those donors, engaging with those donors, and be able to manage and track that, certainly the CRM application, Dynamics 365 CRM and Salesforce are some options that we can help you with if you're interested in needing some assistance in that area. Sarah, I think that's all I had.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Kenneth and Glenn. I know we have covered a lot of content today, and certainly if any questions come up after this webinar, please reach out. We'd love to talk about your organization and your specific needs. So thank you again for attending today's presentation. We hope you have a great day, and we'll be sending out the recording for this in just a few days' time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.